In a moment, we're going to see the role of the heart as a tuning dial. The heart is not just an organ. It is the key to raising our consciousness to access the spirit world of God or the kingdom of God. It's the 4th of May, the first week in May 2025. We want to thank God that He gave us the strength and ability to be with you this morning. And thank you all for joining us in our online broadcast sermon this morning. Our family, we thank you once again for helping us financially with your tithe and your love offerings. It is truly and appreciated. We are extremely grateful that you can afford us this opportunity to be your spiritual guide. We have been dealing with some very interesting things in the last few weeks. Specifically last week, we spoke about something called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, and we know that we have two of them based in our brain, and these two tools that the Lord has given us is vital for helping us go through difficult times. It is the weapon that God has given us to stand against all the trials that we face in this world. It is necessary for us to have this tool, this physical instrument that God has put in this body of ours. It is vital for us to have it because we are living in the world amongst the darkest of dark enemies. And the enemy will come against the children of God with everything that he's got. And when I say children of God, I mean all of God's creation that are human. The devil hates every single one of us. And so this weapon God has given us for us to exercise and use. And it helps us to be motivated. So even if we are brought to our knees by some difficulty that we face, the drive comes from this organ, that we can wake up, we can get back into the battle, and we don't just fall and give up. And I shared with you that every time you choose to do a difficult task, you build the muscle of this, what I've called AMCC. And every time you build it, you become stronger. So the weights that you are able to lift in terms of the problems that you face will be greater and greater. You will have greater strength, and you will become so powerful that no matter what the enemy throws at you, you will be able to withstand that. You may fall, you may go to your knees, but you will get up. You will be motivated. If you always choose the easier path in life, that muscle becomes shrunken. And so when you go through even the smallest difficulties, you crumble. You know, some of the things that we see when it comes to suicide, when people have relatively easy lives, and which means that the AMCC is shrunken. When they have difficulties, even the smallest of difficulties, it becomes a mountain for them to move. They just don't have the willpower to get up and be motivated to fight. And so these are the people that feel that ending their life is a solution to their problems. They just, instead of fighting, they just want to escape from this world. Not to mention that the whole situation is aggravated by the fact that because you have low intensity of spirit, an unclean spirit will come and sit inside your body and shrink that AMCC even more. So it is for your overall health that in life you must always not be afraid to take on a challenge. You must not be afraid to try again. You must not give up the will to live or survive or overcome. No matter how many times you tried and you failed, still get up, because that will build who you are. It builds your character. Now, I mentioned in brief and passing last week about the story of Adam and Eve. Now, there's a storybook that we read, a spiritual document called The Life of Adam and Eve. And in that book, it speaks about the conversations that Adam had with Eve in the garden and all the details surrounding what happened after they sinned. Now, it's important for you to know this, that for this first 7 years, Adam and Eve were alone in the garden. In other words, there was no Satan. So they lived there for 7 years with absolutely no hardship whatsoever. Everything was provided for them. They even mentioned, after they were kicked out of the garden, that they had it all. They even ate the food of angels. And so they didn't lift a finger to do anything, which means by the very nature of life being easy, that instrument that God has given us called the AMCC, inside of Eve and inside of Adam, was weak and shrunken. They didn't exercise that muscle. They didn't need to be motivated. And so when the test came 7 years into their life in the garden, and Satan tempted Eve, she chose the easier route to disobey God and taste of the fruit. She had no willpower to resist, which is natural for a person who hasn't a developed AMCC. So you must remember that people who had easy lives, who've always chose the easier route in life, they are the ones that get tempted the most. And it's easy for these kinds of people to get depressed very easily, to turn to drugs and other source of dulling their senses so that they don't have to face the consequences. These are the ones that are very easily tricked into being unfaithful to their partners. So, in the first 7 years of your life, it's important for you as a child to know what hardship is. And for those of you who have been through this, to know what hardship is for the first 7 years, you become very strong later on in life, and you become motivated, self-motivated. You don't get easily brought down by circumstances. So there's an advantage of people going through difficulties, especially early on in life. So it's not a curse. It's a blessing in disguise, as the saying goes. Let's just watch this.
When life wants to make you stronger, it sends you battles, not blessings. But you think you're being punished. You think life is against you. But the obstacle is never the enemy. It is the invitation. When David was meant to become a king, he wasn't handed a throne. He was handed a giant. Because greatness is not given. It is provoked. It must be fought for. It must be awakened inside you. The mountain was never meant to crush you. It was meant to show you who you are. So the next time life sends you a storm, don't curse it. Don't run from it. Bow to it. For the storm has come to crown you.
Now, Romans chapter 5 says this, and not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulations produce perseverance, perseverance builds character, and character gives hope. So here Paul is describing, you see, these people didn't know about the AMCC and all, but they knew the value to a person who goes through trials. How does a person that goes through trials produce perseverance? How? It's because they build a resistance, a willpower, and that willpower it helps to show or develop their character, and their character always has hope. In other words, they're motivated by the fact that if we get up from here, there is hope. And so Paul declares it, but it also was declared in the Old Testament with Solomon. And Solomon says this in Proverbs, for a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked shall fall by calamity. Now we'll just take a brief look at the life of Adam and Eve. And the Lord turned his face from us, Eve tells Adam, because we did not fulfill what we promised. My Lord, how much penitence are you thinking of doing, since I brought labor and tribulation upon you? Adam said to Eve, you cannot do as much as I, but do as much so that you might be saved. For I will do 40 days of fasting. You, however, arise and go to the Tigris river and take a stone, stand upon it in the water, up to your neck in the depths of the river. Let not a word go forth from your mouth, since we are unworthy to ask of the Lord, for our lips are unclean from the illicit and forbidden tree. Stand in the water of the river for 37 days. I, however, will do 40 days in the water of the Jordan. Perhaps the Lord will have mercy on us. But it was a bit too, the horses bolted. They were trying to exercise the AMCC, but they've already given in to temptation. Their willpower was, so in other words, they were trying to build willpower after the event. And the fact that they tried to build willpower after the event meant that whilst they were weak, they lost everything, because they didn't have any challenges to build the seat of their willpower, this tool that God has given us. And as an example, they cried, these two, because they lost everything, their safety and security, their health, their food, everything that was provided for them, they lost it. Just because they had a weak AMCC. So sometimes, instead of doing a fast and building your AMCC after the event, it's better that you build it before, so that when something tempts you, you have a strong willpower to resist that temptation. We see this in the New Testament with Ananias and Sapphira. Now, let me tell you, it's a difficult thing for a person to let go of their wealth, their money, their substance, because they need this substance, this money, to survive. Some of them need it to buy luxuries so that they can have comfort. So to part with this money, it's a difficult thing. And what was required or was considered noble in the New Testament, especially in the very early days after Pentecost, all the people, the Jews that were there, that became Christian, they sold everything they had and they gave it to the apostles so that they can use it to travel around and finance the gospel preaching. They also used the money so that they can help the widows survive in a climate where they were under the Roman control. And so, struggling homes, struggling widows, the apostles, they used all the finances they raked in to help this cause of the gospel. And so, this couple, Ananias and Sapphira, they said to Peter, we will sell everything, our land, and we will bring all the money and we will give it to y'all. And so when these people sold their land, they found that they had a lot of money. And so it was very difficult for them. They didn't have, let's say it together, the willpower to make the sacrifice, to give everything. That temptation to keep a portion for themselves, they couldn't resist. What's the reason? They had a weak AMCC. And perhaps this is one of the reasons God has allowed, besides the obvious ones, to further the gospel preaching, but also to benefit the individual. If he has the willpower to do and make a financial sacrifice, he constantly does it. It's a constant exercise of your AMCC. And personally, I found that those who have been constantly faithful are the ones that can really withstand the storms. As a pastor, for many, many years, I've seen this. There's very few, I can't even recall in my mind, there's very few who are financially faithful and fall down and don't get up. And so, when we look at Jesus, he was so amazed at this widow who came to the church and she emptied her purse with the small amount of money she had. In other words, for a widow to give everything, it would have been a challenge. But it seems like she had a very strong willpower. And because of that, Jesus was impressed with this lady's willpower. He saw that there would have been temptation for a widow with so little money to keep that little money to buy some bread and whatever to go home and eat after the church. But he saw that her power to resist that temptation was great, and he was so impressed. that while everybody was seated ready for the service to begin, he called his disciples. He said, you guys come here, I want to show you something. But Lord, the church is starting now. No, I don't want you come here, I want to show you this widow. This is what he was so impressed about, that the strength of the willpower. Now listen to me carefully, because I know there are lots of people who go through these attacks in their lives. And they have weak AMCCs. In other words, they fall down and they refuse to get up. Some people just want to end their lives, and some do it. But many stay living dead for a long time. It's like they're crawling through life. They feel sorry for themselves. No matter what you say to them, they don't want to be motivated to wake up and do something. They don't want to be motivated to give up their bad habits, their drinking, their drugs, their abuse, their anger. Whatever needs to change in them, they just don't have the willpower to change it. That's a very small AMCC, I see. So you know the quality and character of a person. According to Paul, you can see the character of a person and then know the strength of their willpower. And when the devil sees the strength weak, he comes and he finishes them off. Therefore, it's important for you. Start with the small things. Get up from the knees. Stand up. Take baby steps if you want to, but make sure you get motivated. Now we're going to switch gears and we'll bring you back to where we are. But when we're switching gears now, we're going to talk about the Gospel of Thomas. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said this: "It is I who am the light, which is above them all. It is I who am the all. From me did the all come forth, and unto me did the all extend. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there." Jesus said, "He who has recognized the world has found the body, but he who has found the body is superior to the world." Now, just to get a little bit clarity, let's watch this.
Consciousness, it's creating a model of the interests of the organism. And it realizes that the purpose of the exercise is to navigate the organism in the world. And then at some point, it identifies as the organism. And we see this in children typically happening between 2.5 and 5 years old, that they talk about themselves in the first person. Before that, they can already talk, and they talk about themselves in the third person. So we are basically created by our consciousness, by our infant baby consciousness, and then put into this world, in the simulation world that our mind is creating. And then we forget that we created this world in our own mind and identify as this human being that is in this world and is subjected to it. And at some point, we can start meditating and then wake up from this again and realize, oh my God, I'm actually not that self. The self is just a model of a person that doesn't actually exist. It's a story that my mind is telling itself, and I'm actually the universe. I'm everything. And then you wake up a little bit more and you realize, oh no, I'm actually the thing that generates it all. I am the generator of everything that I'm interacting with, or that makes sense to me.
Now, this is for the very astute people. So follow closely with me, because there's a lot of truth that's going to come out. You are not your body. When you see a person lying in a casket dead, that is not them that is dead. That is a body. You listening to me now, you that are listening to me, if you look in the mirror, that is not you listening to me, that's your body. And if I can tell you this now, your mind, you know the brain we talk about, the mind that we think with, it's still not you. Because you are consciousness. I'm going to use another word for spirit and soul, consciousness. Consciousness amalgamates the spirit and the soul. For example, if you think something in your mind now, you think something. Who decides what you think? The mind can't decide what you think because the mind does the thinking. The spirit or the consciousness has the power to decide what you think. So you are consciousness, you are not your body. And so you need to understand this. You are not your mind, you are not your body, you are consciousness. Consciousness makes the decision to fast, to strengthen the body, to strengthen the mind, to control what goes into the mind. Who does it? Consciousness. Consciousness is you. According to Jesus' words, consciousness comes from Him. Everything, including the body, comes from Him. Now, when you're born, you only become conscious of your body and your surroundings as you grow. And then you start to think, programmed, that you are your body. And so you don't realize that you are consciousness that has borrowed a body to live in. Now, for this reason, Jesus said that He is in us, because consciousness is in everything and everything is consciousness. And Jesus is consciousness and consciousness is Jesus. So, when God put us here, He blew His consciousness, His spirit inside of us so that we can join with Him because we are of the same material. Now, in order to connect back to God, we have to be aware of our consciousness. We have to raise the level of our awareness and consciousness until such time we realize that we are not our body. Only then is our level raised so that we can now go into what I've called the unified field, and specifically for the believer, the kingdom of God. Let's remind ourselves of this next clip.
The human brain is virtually a transmitter and receiver of frequency.
You think on frequencies. Your phone operates on frequencies. What you have to do is raise your level of consciousness to that frequency, and then you will attract whatever's on that frequency.
The key is, how do you train it so that it emits the correct frequency of what you want? The secret and the law of attraction doesn't tell you that missing secret ingredient. It's the missing key. It's the element that makes this work. We call it manipulating energy. It's really just how to beam the frequency of your brain of what you want so that it will come into your life.
When thought and emotion become one, then you'll say to the mountain, move, and the mountain will move. And I used to think that that was a metaphor. And I now have seen enough to know that moving a cancerous tumor inside the body of a living woman, that's moving a mountain to me. And it's all done from marrying thought and emotion together.
Now, we learned this before, and it was said in the Gospel of Thomas that if you combine thought and emotion, both, by the way, controlled by consciousness, if we can unite those two and make them beat or vibrate at the same frequency, we'll be able to call anything into existence and it will be. I'm going to teach you a little bit more, but on top of that, if you are truly wise, don't take wise in terms of intelligence, you need to understand the meaning of wise. It is of God. When you are truly wise, you realize that the problems that the body is going through in this world is not you going through it, it's the body going through it. You understand that. My body is going through a certain pain. My body is experiencing a certain thing. It is not me, it's my body. But when you can't distinguish the two, when you think you are the body, you cannot separate consciousness from the body. That means you cannot access the unified field. Now listen to the statement again in the Gospel of Thomas and see if it makes sense to you now. He who has recognized the world has found the body. But he who has found the body is superior to the world. What does that mean? That means if you recognize the body as for what it is, it means that your consciousness rises out of the body, it separates from the body, and you can reach the kingdom of God whilst you're living here. But if you found the body, in other words, you amalgamate with that body, you won't be able to access the kingdom of God. So let's read that again, just so that you understand this. He who has recognized the world, in other words, you recognize the problems you're going through, you recognize everything that you're going through, and you found the body, and now you think you are the body, and the body is going through these things, it's going to be a problem. You're going to suffer all the things and think that you are suffering it. But he who has found the body, in other words, you recognize that, hey, it's just a body. He says, those people are superior to the world. What a powerful statement. So, when a body enjoys sin, it's not the consciousness enjoying it, it's the body enjoying it. So the body enjoys sin, enjoys pleasure, but the consequences of that pleasure will be suffered by the consciousness. Oh man, I hope you understand this. So I'm walking around, indulging myself with all sorts of debauchery. I do all the sinful things, and my body is enjoying it. But when I die, my body disintegrates, but my consciousness is going to suffer what my body did. And so, because throughout my life I couldn't see that it was my body causing the problem, that it was my body enjoying it, I now have to suffer the consequences of my body. I hope you're getting this, people. This is a powerful. So when you're enjoying the pleasures, your soul, your spirit, your consciousness is not really enjoying it. It's not really suffering. It's not. Your consciousness is separate. When you know this, you will be superior to the world. The world will not be able to trap you. Let's go on to our next part. Now we learned this before. We are electromagnetic beings. We live in an electromagnetic field. We communicate to the ethereal world, the spiritual world, the unseen world, through this electromagnetic field. The field around us responds to our specific electromagnetic frequency. This frequency represents our character. And our character is developed through perseverance. And as we persevere, we build our AMCC. So the strength of our AMCC that helps build character is actually responsible for our signature electromagnetic frequency, our EMF. This is how relevant that AMCC is. So our signature EMF is actually who we are. Our consciousness, if it's attached to this body, it vibrates our specific, unique, like a fingerprint electromagnetic frequency. And the unified field responds to that frequency. So the challenges that we face, the problems that our body goes through, it actually, if you separate your consciousness from your body, just think about this for a minute, when you realize that you are not the one going through this, it's your body. You will have a strong AMCC. And these challenges that you are able to withstand and overcome will actually shape your character. And that will give you a specific high EMF, electromagnetic frequency. When we have that right, pure, high EMF, we are able to access the good things from God. All good things come from God, from the unified field. So, it's important for you to have the good things from God, for you to separate from your body. You got to realize that this body is not me. And when you do that, you have a stable EMF, a strong EMF, and that gives God the ability to send good gifts or attract good gifts to you. If you have a weak EMF, you vibrate a certain frequency and attract things in that sphere, in that part of the ethereal world. Generally, those things are demonic and dead. And so this is how people can get possessed. Let us just see the power of the EMF just for a moment. Let's watch.
Your thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field. Your emotions, they're the magnetic charge. Together, they create your electromagnetic signature, a broadcasted signal you send out into the field every second of your life. Now listen, you can't think one thing and feel another and expect your life to change. You might think abundance, but if you feel unworthy, you're sending out a very different signal. When your thoughts and feelings are aligned, when you think greater than you feel, that's when you become a magnet for new possibilities. The quantum field doesn't respond to what we want, it responds to who we are being. So the real work needs us to become the future version of yourself now. Feel it, think it, live it, and let the field respond.
I hope you're understanding. Coming up, in a moment, we're going to see the role of the heart as a tuning dial. The heart is not just an organ. It is the key to raising our consciousness to access the spirit world of God or the kingdom of God. Let's just watch this.
So I think one of the things that we need to be able to do is realize that our brain is not a hard drive storage unit. It's not a place for us to cram information into to just memorize. What it is, it's a radio receiver with a processor. And that radio receiver has a tuning dial that's your heart. And as you are able to tap into the frequencies that are in the field around you, all the knowledge you could ever want and access and have access to is all in this Akashic field all around you. And you can tune into that radio and capture information you've never even learned before. And this is what people refer to as downloading. And it's part of the process of going into higher dimensional experience.
Now, we all have grown up in school, especially, to learn that the heart is a pump and it pumps blood. But wait till we see this revelation. Let's watch.
Rudolf Steiner, whose teachings led to anthroposophical medicine, biodynamic farming, and the Waldorf School, said that the heart is a seven-sided regular form that sits in an imaginary box in the chest. Regular means that all seven sides are identical. Plato described 5 Platonic solids, and Steiner said there was a 6th one. He also said that the heart is not a pump. This fantastic claim was vindicated by Frank Chester, who figured out how to design a 7-sided regular form. This 6th Platonic solid is now called the chestahedron, and it fits perfectly inside a cube at an angle of 36 degrees off-center to the left, the exact same angle that the heart sits in the chest. When submerged in water and spun, 2 counter-rotating vortices are formed. Recent scientific studies have shown that these 2 vortices facilitate the closing of the valves, and when the vortices don't form properly, blood clots will appear. The man who unfolded 1,000 hearts, Paco Torrent Guasp, discovered that the heart is a single muscular band, folded over itself in a spiraling pattern. The heart itself is a vortex of tissue. It is not a pump, it is a vortex machine. For centuries, it was believed that matter can only exist in 3 states, such as water, which can exist as liquid, ice, and vapor. Human cells are 70% water, but most of this water is not in any of these 3 states. We have recently learned that with water, there is a 4th state. This 4th state is called the plasma state, gel phase, exclusion zone, or structured water. And this is what pushes your blood through the entire cardiovascular system. Fueled by infrared energy from its environment, the water in our body becomes an electrical propulsion system. A certain percentage of the water in our body becomes structured water, and the rest remains normal liquid water, or bulk water. The structured water becomes negatively charged and forms the gelatinous outer walls of our capillaries, veins, and arteries. These negatively charged outer walls continuously propel the positively charged bulk water within, carrying the blood with it. This propulsion system will run indefinitely, so long as it stays charged. And the way you charge it is with the Earth's electromagnetic field, infrared energy, and positive thought. The work of Dr. Masaru Emoto has scientifically demonstrated that water exposed to loving human words and thoughts is transformed into its natural hexagonal shape. It becomes structured at a molecular level based on our positive intention. This new model shows that it is the blood that pumps the heart, not the other way around. And in order to keep the flow strong and healthy, our best medicine is to connect to the earth, get sunlight, love ourselves, and love one another with physical touch.
So it's quite the opposite. The blood, or the water in the blood, the combination of negatively charged purified water. When I was speaking about water before, in my earlier sermons, I spoke about purified water. It is negatively charged water, which means that it can transfer electrons, it can give you energy. So negatively charged purified water, in contrast to the bulk positive charged water, it creates an electric charge, a pulse. That pulse in the blood, in the water in the blood, pushes the blood forward, goes through the heart, and then pumped around the body. So what pumps the heart is actually purified water in combination with the bulk water. That pumps the blood. So the heart is not really the pump. It is a channel through which blood flows. Now let's watch this, gets interesting. Now we saw that the heart generates a magnetic pulse through the vortices. Now we've seen this whirlwind vortices. We've spoken about it before. The upswirl and the downswirl. We've seen what vortices do. They open up a channel. They open up an arabut. They open up a vortex so that things can come through. We did that teaching about the yin and yang, that symbol. Anyway, no time to go through that. But the bottom line is the heart is very much responsible for the electromagnetic broadcast field of your character, the heart. In science, it's called the little brain. In fact, it's got a brain of its own. That muscle called the heart, it's got a brain of its own. It's similar to the gut we talk about. Now, we have a link between the gut, the heart and the brain. It's called a gut-heart-brain axis. Now, what powers the heart's magnetic field or magnetic signature? That signature is powered by, if you saw the video, a few things, including nature, but more importantly and less known, by the emotion of love. Now, when you have love, now we're going to talk about this, it's going to be eye-opening. When you have love, now you don't love with your brain, you love with your heart. This part of you is where love comes from. For example, when you see the person you're going to marry, remember, think back. You don't think with your mind, you don't feel with your mind, you feel with your heart. Therefore, sometimes when your parents look at a certain person, they can't understand what attracted you to that person. It's unexplainable. It's something to do with the heart. The heart is the lord of emotions. It is where emotions are kept. Therefore, what you think and what you feel, if they are together, you can ask and you will receive. Move the mountain, so to speak. So, the heart being the seat of emotions, this is where emotions are generated from. This vortex that is created, emotions arise from there. Especially we know about the love emotion, it comes from there. When you have a heartbreak, they call it. That's why when a person lets you down who you've given your love to, it's called a heartbreak. Ancient, very ancient, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, they all knew. You'll find in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they take the heart out of the dead person and they preserve it, because they say that's where the life was. So the emotion part, in other words, your signature EMF is first designed by your heart. And the love emotion is among the most powerful emotions for you to have as an electromagnetic frequency. Now, we know that the mind thinks and sends signals to the heart. We know that. Whole flood of hormones comes through and then our heart starts beating faster, or it slows down or whatever, depending on how you think. But the heart also now, it's learned recently, sends messages to the brain. It sends messages to the gut. It can send messages to all parts of the body. The brain, the heart is like a little brain. Now we learned this, or we can decipher this from what we learned about the law of reversibility. If the mind can send a message to the heart, then the heart can send a message to the mind. Remember? So this is why when you learn things, it's important for you to retain, so that when you need wisdom, it pops up for you. Now in Heart Math, Science of the Heart, exploring the role of the heart in human performance, under the heading Energetic Communication, the first biomagnetic signal was demonstrated in 1863 by Gerard Ball and Richard McPhee in a magnetocardiogram, MCG it was called, that used magnetic induction coils to detect fields generated by the human heart. Now today they use even more advanced technology. The magnetic fields produced by the heart are involved in energetic communication, which we also refer to as cardio-electromagnetic communication. The heart is the most powerful source of electromagnetic energy in the human body, producing the largest rhythmic electromagnetic field of the body's organs. The heart's electromagnetic field is about 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity generated by the brain. This field, measured in the form of an ECG, can be detected anywhere on the surface of the body. Furthermore, the magnetic field produced by the heart is more than 100 times greater in strength than the field generated by the brain, and can be detected up to 3 feet away from the body in all directions using squid-based magnetometers. So this is science proven that the magnetic beat of our heart is stronger than our mind. So emotion is even more powerful than the thoughts that you have in your mind. While thoughts can affect your heart, you need to have your heart affecting your thoughts. Let me put this in perspective. When you hate someone in your mind because of what they did to you, you send a signal to your heart to match an emotion to the thought you have. So the heart listens. Heart says, yes buddy, you hate someone, let me send a frequency to match that hate. So when your mind says you love someone, your heart receives that message. Now when you realize that listen, this is very important. When you realize that even when you pick up a piece of wood, God is there. He is consciousness. He is in everything, including the people that you don't like, including the people that you, so I'll go so far as to say hate, people that you don't forgive. Your consciousness realized that that body did that to you. That mind of that person did that to you. But their consciousness is yours and yours is theirs and theirs is God's and God's is theirs. When you realize this, when your consciousness leaves this body, I'm talking about not physically go away, when it recognizes that the body is not you, it tells the mind, you cannot hate that person, you got to love that person, and when you send that feeling of love, the heart generates the EMF to match that frequency because it says that's what the mind wants. And so instead of the heart being manipulated by the mind in a way that is negative, your consciousness being aware of your surroundings and your body being separate talks to the mind, lets it feel love, lets it send the signal of love, and that EMF is the most potent that you can have. Now, in another scientific paper we read, the heart and brain, however, following several years of research, it was observed that the heart communicates with the brain in ways that significantly affect how we perceive and react to the world. It was found that the heart seemed to have its own peculiar logic that frequently diverged from the direction of the autonomic nervous system. The heart appeared to be sending meaningful messages to the brain that it not only understood but also obeyed. So your heart, you have people that have a good heart. When you have a good heart, when you have a loving heart, the heart can send the message to the brain to be obedient, to start loving, caring, to be empathetic. Neurophysiologists discovered a neural pathway and mechanism whereby input from the heart to the brain could inhibit or facilitate the brain's electrical activity. So these are scientific papers that now show clinically the heart can influence the brain. Now, you express emotion with your heart. So the mind can express a thought and that thought can express the emotion. But what if you start to think with your heart? Let your heart have the emotion and send the message to your brain. Because you love with your heart, not with your mind. By the way, the love hormone, oxytocin, that we speak about, is produced in in the hypothalamus and so forth, in your pituitary gland and thing in your brain, but it's also produced in bulk in the heart. The heart makes oxytocin, or the love or happy hormone. Now, more we read in websites, the seat of the soul. When we talk about the ancients that knew about the secret, the ancient Egyptians preserved the heart during mummification, believing it would be weighed by Anubis against the feather of truth, the divine measure of justice. Ironically, the brain was discarded as totally useless. When Aristotle speaks of the soul in the heart, he has in mind the heart as primary and proximate material organ of the soul. The controlling organ originally informed and activated by the soul, upon which all the other organs depend for their formation and activation by the soul. Most ancient civilizations, including Sumerians, Eastern traditions, they believe that the heart is the seat of consciousness or the seat of the soul. The emotions generate from there. This is one of the reasons you adopt a phrase in Christianity which I don't think people really understand. They don't tell you to give your mind to God. They don't tell you to give your brain to God. They tell you to give your heart to God. Give your love to God. Express the emotion of love towards God. Give Him your soul, because that's the seat of the soul according to ancients. The seat of the soul is the heart. And the seat of the soul is where consciousness is. And we can never let the mind affect our consciousness. We have to let consciousness affect our mind. Are you with me so far? So we cannot let negative thoughts about somebody, what they did to your body, affect the seat of your soul, which is your heart, affect your consciousness. You have to let your consciousness affect your mind. So when your heart belongs to God, you can only then generate the frequency of love, which is what God is. The Bible tells us God is love. Now, Deepak Chopra, it's important for you not to listen to everything that this man says, just in case you're one of those off people, because there's some very dark things that this man speaks about. But there's some things that this particular thing I want you to pay attention to. So let's watch this.
I went to New Jersey to interview a kid who was at that time 6 years old. The mother said he can read my mind. I said, I don't believe it. So I took 2 scientists with me and a camera. So this kid, we put him in one room, his mother in another room, and we gave her a book to read. Okay, and she's not reading it loudly, she's reading it mentally. The kid is in the other room and he's trying to punch the computer, but he is typing what she is reading. Then I asked this kid, I said, how do you do it? He says, I love my mother so much, I can get into her mind, then I know what she's thinking. That oneness is love. Love is not a sentiment, it's the ultimate truth at the heart of creation. The ultimate truth, where subject and object are one, where lover and beloved are one, where seer and scenery are one. This thing that we call love, ultimately, is the entanglement of souls.
So his statements about love is the ultimate truth. It's the interconnectedness of all things. Go back to the oneness of God. God is in all things is God. Consciousness is in everything is consciousness. So what you see is also comes from the same consciousness. The seer and the scenery are one and the same. So here we see an experiment that he speaks about, where if you vibrate at the frequency of love, you can see into the heart of another person, or you can read their mind. When you love something so much, you can read their thoughts, and this is why Jesus is able to see through us, because He loves us so. This is why the devil can never read your mind. He can read your mind through your actions and whatever electromagnetic frequency you're sending out. But he cannot read what thoughts you have. Only God that loves you can do that. And if you love God, because you are consciousness and you realize that you are in oneness with Him, you can read God's thoughts, His will, His purpose. You can read it. You can understand it. You can go through life knowing that it's part of His plan. Whatever your body is suffering is part of His plan. But you can't do it without vibrating the frequency of love. You know, when you are a counselor, a spiritual counselor, you see, this is why psychologists will never be able to get to the root problem of a person in front of them. They used case studies from their texts and what they learned to assess a certain person sitting in front of them, and they use a template to diagnose those people with so and so disorder. But when you are a spirit-filled person and you love that person that you're speaking to, you care very much about their lives, God gives you insight through that love to read their EMF, to read their thoughts, to read their feelings, so you can direct them in the correct path that is best for them. So in order to be an effective spiritual guide, you must love the people you are talking to. And a psychologist will not do that. They have no love for the person. And this is why you can't take up God's work if you don't love people. You can't prophesy if you don't love people. You got to care for people. You got to love people. Now you don't have to run around fake. Now, you know, I shared this story with you once, but I'll just share with you. You know, there was an elderly pastor with us a while ago, and we closed service for 1 week during the Christmas period, the time when the church was open, you know, constantly before 2020. And during that week, for some reason, this pastor went to visit another church. Now, you know, as much as I teach, some people, it goes this side and it comes out that side. Because I warn people never to sit under another ministry. Because you don't know what spirits are there. But some people don't listen, they just go there. And then weeks later or months later, they phone me and tell me, Pastor, I'm dreaming of this, I'm going through that. And you don't realize where it came from. But God shows me when you come to me. So I know where you picked it up from. Trust me, I will know. And this man, supposed to be smart, supposed to listen, but he never listened. And this is why he is not here today. So that 1 week he went to visit this church not far away from his home. And the pastor saw him there and made him sing. And then the next week went to visit him at his house, brought a big cake to give him. What was his purpose? To cause that man to come join his ministry. You can't pretend in the kingdom that you care for people when you have an ulterior motive. That's why God will not give those people and trust them. Well, naturally, it's not about God too. Naturally, your EMF is not vibrating with love. Therefore, you won't be able to read and effectively help people. People who go there are wasting their time, if not led by the devil himself. Jesus says this feeling of love. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Through Paul he says, now abide faith, hope, love. But these three. But the greatest of these EMF signals is love. It's generated from the heart. It is because God is love, it's matching the consciousness of God. Now, you know, we learnt about Rumi, the so-called Muslim, who himself, he said, is not a Muslim. By the way, that poet we read about is quite a smart smart ancient writer, philosopher, and poet. I'm going to read to you some of the things that he wrote. He says, let the beauty of what you love be what you do. Then he says, your task is not to seek love. Hey, this is so powerful, people. But merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. I'm going to get back to that. I once had 1,000 desires, but in my one desire to know you, all else melted away. What he wanted to know? He wanted to know God, the Creator, the consciousness of all things. Then he says, I belong to no religion. My religion is love. My heart is my temple. He even knew that his heart is his temple. Oh my goodness. Where the soul actually resides. He says, if I love myself, I love you. If I love you, I love myself. Now let's just for a moment, just briefly, I'm not going to go into details with this, perhaps next week. But he's saying that he wanted to pursue so many things in life. But all these desires melted away because he only wanted to know love. Well, one desire is to know God. And then he says, I don't follow any religion because religion doesn't lead you to God. He says, my religion is love. So what is God? Jesus is love, God is love. So if he follows God, if he follows love, then he's following God, our God. Oh wow. Now this man really spoke truth when he said this statement. You don't need to seek love. So people want to ask, how do we find love? How do we generate love? This is a secret. Listen, I'm telling you a secret. How do you generate it? Rumi gave us a secret. What did he say? He says, you don't have to look for love. You have to look for the barriers, the obstacles that prevent you from loving. What prevents you from loving your neighbor? They spoke against you. That's a barrier. They did something to you. That's a barrier. They hurt you with the words. That's a barrier. So look at the barriers. These are the barriers that are stopping me from loving that person. Break the barriers down. If you break the barriers down, then love automatically fills the heart. So listen, let me just finish this. Now, you know the challenges that you go through in life. God has placed it there to build your AMCC, not for you to build barriers with. Because you use those challenges, those hardships, and you make that a barrier to love your life. In other words, to have the will to live. You use that barrier to hate someone, to have unforgiveness. You use that barrier because you went through challenges. Now that challenges are not there for you to put up barriers. Those challenges are there for you to have willpower to break down any future barriers. So you must will it. I will it to break that barrier down so that my heart can start to generate love, the frequency of God. God is love. Without that frequency, you can't find God. So now I want to leave you with that for this week. And I want you to eat it, chew it, swallow it, understand it, watch it again if you need to. Make sure you absorb everything, because if you apply these principles, God is going to be unlimited for you. You're going to have an unlimited resource in God. And your life will be a blessing. Your body can go through hell, but your consciousness will have peace. We're going to take communion this morning. So join me as we celebrate the death and resurrection of our Lord through His blood and His flesh. Let us pray. Father, I thank you for the bread. I thank you for the wine. Bless it into our bodies as we partake with you. Once again, join with you in oneness. As we partake of these emblems, We ask you to strengthen us, to give us victory, to give us power, to give us love in our hearts. In Jesus' name I pray. Thank you, Lord. Beloved, I thank you for joining with us this morning. I pray that you will have a blessed week, strengthened week. I'll see you again next week. God bless.